Wolf is a powerful word, dangerous, deadly, but it's also free and living in some kind of harmony with its own nature. This is the focal point of the album Wolf. I started working on this record in early 2014. My first thoughts were to create a record that looks forward, but also stands on the shoulders of the previous album, Superstrings, with the cyberpunk-ish science fiction world that I'm writing my music in. After writing 4 or 5 tracks, I realized that they describe a form of travel. This became the concept of the rest of the album. So there's a chronological order to the titles, like the wolf is on some kind of journey. So I talked to my label and explained them about the concept, and they thought that I should tell people about it. So I wrote 8 or 9 pages of text about the album. And let's face it, nobody wants to read that, so that was kind of a stupid idea. But maybe this audio thing will be better because I can show you the sounds, etc. Whether the wolf is a person, the whole humanity is simply a wolf, I do not know. Does the concept involve a science fiction theme or an inner journey and the exploration of universal human problems? I don't know, maybe all of them. Wolf Song Guide. Track number 1, Overture. Welcome to the Wolf Den. Traditionally, the overture reveals various themes of the performance like in classical music, but there's no melodies from the other tracks. It's more like an overture over the atmospheres of the album. The album starts by welcoming listeners to the Wolf Den. So right now you're witnessing a person going through the rite of passage and being accepted into the world of the other wolves. I'm seeing this cave with a big fireplace and a very dramatic setting. Maybe there's some chains somewhere, or I don't know. The sound universe is a little more natural than in the rest of the album, symbolizing the fact that we begin this journey in nature. I've been making some synth wolf sounds that I'm using. It's almost like the wolf is singing. There's some poetic beauty in this dangerous animal who likes to sing. On the vinyl I wrote a poem about this too, in the gatefold cover. There's a few haze in the track. Maybe that's the other wolves watching the one wolf being accepted into the group. And the track ends with the sound of the city, and there's a wolf breathing rhythmic to the beat. In the beginning you heard footsteps, then the person went into the wolf then and now coming out like a wolf, and into the modern day perhaps. You know, like the city sounds and all. So you started like a human and now you're a wolf. And you will have to listen to the rest of the album to see how that goes. This was the track I wrote last. At that time I had written 8 or 9 tracks and I was having trouble writing new stuff. I felt like I kept repeating myself, and that's not a very good place to be when you have a deadline and you want to release an album. So I decided to go somewhere else with my mobile studio. I packed the car and I went to a small Danish island called Ærø. Very small. I think you can drive from the one end to the other of the island in like 20 or 30 minutes. At the hotel there was a big gravel driveway with lots of small people. Maybe that's what inspired me to the intro. Because when the track starts you can hear a person walking and the wolf is howling. So when I had connected all my gear and set up the computer, I was ready for recording. I just kept trying to write something, but I didn't get anywhere. At one point I looked out of the window and I can see some kind of very dark gate, and through it I can look out over the sea and the other islands. The sun shines and it's all very beautiful. So this becomes symbol for the first track in the album. The gate has some kind of symbolic meaning for me. Because what is a gate? Is the gate something you can look through and see beautiful stuff? A gate can be something that allows people to go through to the other side. It can also stop people. Is it like that? Or is it like you can walk through the gate and then you're on the other side? Or maybe it's forbidden to go through the gate. Or perhaps you get some kind of revelation. There's a lot of symbolic meaning to this. So this was track number 1, Overture. Welcome to the Wolf Den. The previous track, Welcome to the Wolf Den, ended with that we went through the rite of passage and we came from nature and ended up in the city. So now the wolf is a reality. It was important for me that the track was really powerful, but not evil. It's a little dangerous, but it also has a sense of freedom, like the wolf itself. Actually, this track was a pitch for a high-end fashion commercial, but I decided to use it in a Code Elektro setting instead. And I'm really glad I did, because it's the most important track on this album, I think. vocoder part was really fun to work with. I think there's like 3 vocoders and a lot of effects on it, and I really think it gives it something to the overall setting and atmosphere. So obviously it says Code Elektro, and then it says like woof or maybe even wolf. I'm not sure, but it could be both. There's a middle part of the track where I wanted to have some dialogue or voiceover, just like Michael Jackson's Thriller. So I talked to John Carpenter about some voiceover, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. That would be really cool though, maybe some other time. I wrote this on a summer day when I was on vacation, just like Welcome to the Wolf Den. Actually, I write most of my stuff here in the studio, but yeah. Anyways, I wrote this when I was on a vacation, lots of sun, etc. Perhaps that is why there's some exotic instrument hidden in the background. For instance, there's a didgeridoo somewhere down in the mix, maybe you can hear it. And the high-end fashion brand is not called gasoline. We came from the wolf den, and now we're wolf, and now we're out in the wild nature. So the area is outlined, the Scandinavian landscape with the snow-capped mountains, pine trees and northern lights. That was the inspiration for this track. The pads are the blue skies and Scandinavian winter sun. For me, the high lead melody is the Northern Lights, and the powerful hits I think of as part of the big mountains, and you know, it's powerful. There were some big changes in my life here. I moved around a lot, and the Code Elektro was one of my few fixed points, and I'm really glad I had that. Maybe that's why the melody sounds a little sad. I'm not sure. Voyager. So the Voyager. The journey continues. We came from The Wolf then, we're Wolf, we're out in Scandinavia, and now we are voyaging into the unknown. So the journey continues. This synth bass arpeggio pattern could signal a trip to outer space, hence the title. I wanted to have the feeling that one moves forward resiliently through the surroundings, and the surroundings may be a little mysterious. I'm getting this night atmosphere here. I'm a bass player, and I started out playing bass, and I have been playing bass the most of my life. So when I'm working on a bass pattern or arpeggio, I use a lot of time just to get the right notes. How can I make this sound as good as possible? It's really important for me, and I think you can hear that in some of my tracks. There's also a lead that sounds like a person singing or almost screaming. That could be the mysterious surroundings. Track number 5, Slow Motions. This is the ballad of the record. Is the wolf experiencing a romance on the journey? Or something like that. I use a Moog synthesizer for the lead sound and the bass because of the analog nature. Basic rhythm and drumming feels very much alive, which gives this organic feel, I think. The drums are very significant, and I like how they are a contrast to the rest of the track. In addition, the lead is duplicated. I imagine that this is a duet. Track number 6, Interlude Moon. So now the full moon appears and new emotions arise. This is symbolized by the tense atmosphere and the change in the middle of the track, where we end up somewhere completely different than from where we started. The drums generally don't fade in, so something is beginning to happen. Typically, the interlude is a transition piece, and now the album takes a turn in its course of action. And the wolf is howling at the moon, or something like that. Track number 7. Impactor, Storm. The forces of nature are at play. Deep bass drives us forward through a very potent thunderstorm. And the track starts and ends with Thunder, which was recorded somewhere in the heart of Jutland, where I live. At night, of course. The title is also something, impact, or we have the thunderstorm and there's lots of impacts, so something like that. We came from the wolf den, we became a wolf, we went out in the nature, we traveled, we met some romance perhaps, and then the moon came out and it changed stuff, and then there was the storm, and now we are lost in time. Track number 8, Lost in Time. After the storm, we are lost. I want this to have an atmosphere of very powerful drums and guitars, which leads into a simple and intense electronic universe. It really has to have that big contrast. For the track to have an explosive contrast, I asked my friend Leo Badinella from Chile to play a guitar solo. I sent him an MP3 file and he recorded it in his studio in Santiago, and it just sounds terrific. It really is a great solo. I love the melody and the tone and the atmosphere and how it builds up, and he's such an amazing guitarist. And I really think it adds to the contrast from the strictly electronic beat, and then you have the crazy, hard rock piece with a guitar solo. So that was Lost in Time, where we are lost in time. Act 9, Dark Night. The night is dark and mysterious. The intro sound is a wolf's howl, which is manipulated by a synthesizer. The sound universe is building up without redemption and almost in a trance-like manner. There's a lot of space in the dark room. After writing this track, I walked around in the city at night and listened to it. I had a sense of melancholy. Somehow this illustrated my feelings at the time. The memory is very clear to me, and I really remember the feelings I had at that time. Track number 10, Neon. The story goes on. I used my old Roland JX3P from the 80s to create the synth sounds here, with a lot of noise, and was slightly out of tempo, but that's just add to the atmosphere. We can see light in the darkness, a town perhaps, neon lights. I imagine that the high melody is the light on top of the heavy, slow beat. The mood, again, is the most important thing. Journey is coming to an end. Track number 11, Post-Looted Transformation. The journey is over and we are transforming. For this track I wanted to combine Code Elektro sci-fi style with something else to illustrate that now there's something new on the way. I decided it would be interesting to incorporate a somewhat atypical instrument in a Code Elektro setting, that is. So I asked my good friend Samuel Heislet to play saxophone on this track, and it just sounds gorgeous. He's really talented sax player. So we have this very strict beat, and there's not a lot of development in the beat itself. It's just going on and on and on. And then I wanted to have this melody on top that, you know, is just creativity and wild, and a lot of stuff is going on. So we have the contrast again with the firm thing, and we have the creative thing on the other hand. And some way down the line towards the ending, the sax is duplicated by another synthesizer to illustrate the concept of further transformation. And after that, there's another synthesizer that has this kind of evil or scream-like texture, and it gets this little dark and mysterious. So Post-Looted is the final part of the show, and the journey is over. We came from the wolf den, we became the wolf, we went out in the Scandinavian nature, we went on a voyage, we met some love perhaps. Then the moon came out, and like the wolf we have to howl at it. The storm came, and we were lost in time in the dark night. But then we started to see some lights, and at the end we have this transformation. So maybe it sounds kind of silly talking about it, but this was the concept for the album. It's really interesting to look back and follow the way in which ideas came to life. There are many things which became clear only now when I had to talk about this. There's a lot of things that are not revealed, but those are left to the listener's imaginations. I won't tell you everything. Also because the most important thing is not how I felt, but how other people, how you would listen to this. And I just want to say thanks for listening. It has been really fun to talk about the tracks. And please, if you want to know more, write me an email or follow me on the social medias. You can get the album on the Code Elektro website. I will put that in the show notes. Anyways, thanks for listening.